Then there's an exercise without the drilling you're going to get after the first one. So this is, there is capability model, business architecture. We mentioned business right at the beginning. I fundamentally believe that the business architecture is part of enterprise architecture role. We can go into the history of enterprise architecture, which come out of IT functions, tend to sit in IT functions, and people tend to think of enterprise architecture as enterprise IT architecture, and very systems focused. In this next presentation, there'll be a single mention of the system, the word Linux, mainframes, which will not appear in my presentation at all. So who am I? Colin Smart, usual contact stuff. 20 odd years doing architecture. I know I don't look old enough, but that's the way it is. European research projects, financial services. Disclaimer, I currently work for Deloitte. This is not a Deloitte approved presentation. I am not speaking on behalf of Deloitte here today. I have no idea if they'd agree with what I'm going to say. So that's a disclaimer taken care of. So definitions of business architecture. No, give me a definition of business architecture. What do you think business architecture is?
How the business operates to the structure.
Okay. I think it's two things. It's how it operates and how it makes money.
How it makes money.
It's both a description and a design for the future.
And one last question. So at the back, throw a suggestion of business architecture. What does business architecture mean to you?
The architecture of the business.
Thank you. That's a nice, concise one. Let's run through a couple. The Federation of Enterprise Architecture Professional Organizations, them, have a very, I dare say, very architectural description of what business architecture is. Business architecture used to define competitive structures and processes, leveraging existing strengths, identifying potential investment opportunities that advance the business's objectives and drives innovation. Okay, you can see where that's coming from. It's a bit of marketing spiel, but that's their view. Another view. This has come initially from the Open Group, the Business Architecture Specialists Group, and it's now been picked up largely by the Business Architecture Guild, Rosen's organisation. A blueprint of the enterprise that provides a common understanding of the organisation and is used to align strategic objectives and tactical demands. So that's coming back to those descriptions there. I tend to come back down to that one. You know, the what, the why, the where, the when, the who, the how, and the how well of an enterprise. So an architecture to me is to answer questions about the enterprise. There's a range of different definitions. Because of context. Personally, I prefer pictures. And this is, I'll put the accreditation up now. This is based on the Business Architecture Guild's Business Architecture Body of Knowledge diagram, which I don't entirely agree with. So I've adapted it. But that's the source materials and due accreditation.
Can you read them out?
I'm just about to, sorry. So in the core, let's say for the business, the capabilities of the business. The information, so we mentioned information at the beginning, is often missed out. And posting on LinkedIn today, there was somebody saying, you know, I can never get anyone to talk about information in architecture. It's like, really? So information is core at the centre. And then the value streams, which are generally considered the how an organisation makes money. In that space. And they seem to be the core of an organisation. And I think that's probably fair, because when you look at what they actually describe, they are pretty fundamental to what a business is. And if you look at the capabilities, the information, the value streams of a supermarket, they'll be different from the capabilities, information, and value streams of a bank, or of a local authority, or of a container company.
If you're an oil company like Shell,
yes.
Where do oil rigs?
Well, the oil rig's an asset, it's not a capability. The capability would be extracting oil. So the rig is a mechanism to achieve oil extraction. So the capability is extract oil. Because you can extract it through an oil rig, you can in the North Sea, you can extract it through a rig on land, or in some parts of the world, potentially tar sand to bubble up.
So oil rigs are capable.
Well, the oil rig would be a mechanism to achieve the capability of extract oil.
Our services and value streams you're talking about.
Pardon?
Usually in the business architecture, you start with the business strategy and the business services of the organization. Are the value streams here the services that we expect to have in the organization that will be supported by the capabilities and the information?
You look at different orders. So you can say that the capability would be, take an example, the capability would be extract oil, refine oil, market oil, sell oil, if you like. So they could be capabilities, and you put them together into a sequence to get the value stream.
Okay. So the value stream is a service that we provide to our clients.
Or potentially supply internally as well. But around those, that core is what makes Shell different from BP. So if you were to take Shell and BP, two similar organisations doing similar things in a similar industry, you'd expect to see capabilities, information and value streams are roughly the same. They operate in the same market, they supply the same services, they're trying to achieve the same outcomes, but they are different companies. And I would expect to see that difference portrayed around the outer edges. Also part of the business architecture, other aspects of that business architecture. Now there are many more, and this is white on white, so it's not very clear. Stakeholders, which are traditionally the internal and external stakeholders. The vision, strategy and tactics, what is the business trying to achieve in an organisation, and therefore that would differentiate Shell and BP. I'm just picking on them. I took on Marks and Spencer and Devon, since they back who they are. But they operate in the same business, in the same market. Initiatives, projects, how they're going to achieve that. So coming back to the business strategy pieces, you've got that at the top corner, then the initiative and projects is the execution element almost of that space. Decision and events, responding to what's happened, what gets decided. You might think of that as policy sometimes. Think of the policy of the business in that space. Measures and metrics, very much if you're not measuring what you're doing, how do you know you're doing it properly? Or at least doing it according to what you're expecting, which may not be properly. The products and services that you supply to the customers, your organisation, and that's the one in the Business Architects Guild. They have that organisation block in as that core. Because they take the organisational structures, who's doing your work as part of your core business. Now, I disagree with that, in that an organisation can be doing the same thing, have the same capabilities, delivering the same services, and decide that actually that bit of functionality is going to be delivered by somebody completely separate. We're going to outsource that, we're going to buy it as a service. As a business service, payroll, for example. You might do payroll inside and decide, actually, I'm now going to do my payroll over there for a payroll service. It's a commodity service, it's not part of our core function, it's not shipped it outside. And therefore, I have it on the outside edge because they're things that are more malleable, going to change more. Whereas the centerpieces I see as being more consistent to what it means to be a high street retailer, investment bank, and so on. And then obviously, again, potentially coming from external, again, policies, rules and regulations, that external market pressure that's coming in, the governmental pressure, the legal pressure that says you need to operate a particular way. So say that's been adapted from the Business Architecture Guild. Now, having said that, I disagree with it. There's an awful lot of very good material in there. If you ever want to flick through the website, some good stuff in there reading about business architecture. So how do my model fit against that? And click it through, you just add them in, get to the end where we'll do one at a time. And I will. So against my definition, they sort of fit in, not perfectly, but it gives you a feel for how we're going to fit these things in the business architecture space. So having talked a lot about business architecture, talked enough about business architecture, to set the context of where we're going to go, I want to now zone in on capabilities in that space. That is not to ignore all the other parts which are also required as part of business architecture. But I've only got the hour. You've got to get an exercise and try to define it into something that's manageable in that space. So, good capability modeling. It's a pile of text here. Don't worry if we move the text. The slides will all come out and read them later. So, the business capability provides that abstraction of what a business does. At a certain level. So if you think of, if you represent that functional structure, the what it does, not the organizational structure who does it. You'll often see companies, people are trying to build what they would call capability maps, and they start off by going, we've got an HR function, so they've got HR written in the box. We've got a finance function, so they've got finance written in the box. And what they're trying to do is take their current organizational structure and go, it's this team and that team and then that team and that team, because there's a feeling that if we've got a team doing something, it must be doing something of value for us. What we're trying to do here is say, go to what is the company trying to achieve. You can look at it from outside in or inside out, that's another approach. From outside in, if you look at someone like Marks and Spencer, fast moving food, let's say food, clothing, group. From the outside, what are they doing with this? They're sourcing product, they're managing locations, they are managing payments, they are managing orders. That's their capabilities are coming through. The fact that they happen to have an HR function, a supply function, somebody that might be a store manager, is an accident of how they're currently operating. It doesn't define their business. So it's very much around what an enterprise needs to do. Now, again, enterprise is another word I want to focus on slightly. So if you take Tesco, for example, thinking of that. That's an enterprise. You think, what does it do? They've got the Tesco cafes, they've got the Tesco food, they've got the Tesco clothes and so on.
Tesco Bank.
And Tesco Bank, there's another example. Now, if we wind ourselves back before Tesco Bank became wholly owned by Tesco, it was Tesco Bank, and it was run and managed by the Royal Bank. So you can say, well, Tesco as an enterprise has a bank. But Tesco doesn't actually run the banking part, doesn't need to run the banking part. So you've got the enterprise would be Tesco as the big box, rather than the business that would be Tesco, what Tesco actually does themselves. So thinking enterprise, you reach out into partnerships, into people supplying services to you, that defines your enterprise. So enterprise and business, perhaps slightly different terms. And the reason that becomes important later on is if you start worrying about, well, actually, what's the objectives of my enterprise, they're different from the objectives of the business, because if your business has a number of partners, those partners have their own objectives that may or may not align with yours. So that's why the enterprise is a more important measure. Also, if you take it from that functional view, what it actually does, what Tesco does in terms of selling product, or Marks and Spencer does in terms of selling product, hasn't really changed in 20, 30 years. They've got bigger stores, they've got smaller stores, they've got self-service, they've got checkout. But actually, if you think about it at a certain level, they've got locations, they've got products, they've got the ability to take your money. That hasn't really changed probably since the Middle Ages. So it defines that retail model. However, once you've got this structure, those other bits around there today will move more quickly and also define more about what your enterprise is doing as opposed to enterprises in your space. When you've got that capability model, the thing is that it gives you that foundational blueprint on which you can overlay so many other things. Take a look at the overlays later on. But there's so much you can overlay onto that to help get that message across, particularly get that message across to non-IT people, across to business stakeholders. But it's also vital to get it across to people within IT, portfolio planning. There's a number of other aspects that can use that foundational model of that business, of that organisation. It's probably worth noting though that every organisation's capability model, you can guarantee somebody will come up with, but I wanted to show X, and it doesn't quite work. So while I'm saying these are really useful and valuable things to have, they are not the only mechanism, or the only means of communication you're going to come up with. And the quote at the bottom there, granted this was around statistical models, but it's still fairly true that all models are wrong, but some are useful. So your model of your enterprise, if you build up your capability map, will not be right, in that it will not represent every single quirk of that business, of that enterprise. But it will be good enough to be useful and add value. And we'll see shortly where that challenge comes through. So a capability defines a unique collective ability that can be applied to achieve a specific outcome. So capabilities is very much around a capability only meaningfully exists if it delivers something, it delivers some output, some outcome, some result. Otherwise, why are you doing it? And then the capability model is a complete set of those things, or as completely as you want to build, that defines your enterprise. Okay?
I know language is a problem.
Yes.
Not only in IT, but the whole
Absolutely.
business and all the rest of it. So how would you compare capability models to operating models? Do you think they're the same thing?
No.
They're a different thing? How are they related? What's your view?
I would argue they're different things. If I look at a capability model, or an operating model, I would expect to see people, process, locations, and so forth in there. I wouldn't expect to see them represented in a capability model as it stands, but I would see it being, I have used it as a foundational model onto which I can then overlay the people, the process, the locations on top of that.
So do you see an operating model as a higher or lower level of abstraction of a capability model?
An operating model I would see as a greater level of detail than you're going to get a capability model. So an operating model would be a capability model plus, or refined or expanded, whatever it be. But in terms of common language, this is where we're going to get into, touch briefly on the information aspect as well. When you're creating your capability model, one of the side effects can often be creating a high-level information model for the organization. And when I say high level, it's going to be really high level because an organization is going to have, I'll pick one of the RFU, for example, has about 7 high-level capabilities, which then you can define to sub-capabilities within that. Now, obviously, if you think what the RFU does, whole pile of activities, is that hundreds and hundreds of clubs that are members of the RFU, all doing different things, so you think, actually, how can we possibly represent that as 7 things? So the rugby football union, a sporting union body, in this case. A bank might have 10, 12 top-level capabilities. And I'm saying 10 or 12 because it depends exactly how you would choose to define them from your perspective. And there is no one model, but the models are consistent and referenceable across the board. But when it comes to given language, a common link between executive intent and operational activities, that's probably as close as I'm going to get towards consulting speak, from what I've said. And where I've used that again is in the portfolio plan. We're saying, actually, we have a big problem in this space, we're going to put projects in this space. And then you look at what's coming from all the different divisions in the organizations, and they're all hammering that one capability. And you go, actually, the organization cannot absorb that much change in that point just now. So it does help with that message across. At a simple level, you can also say, everyone agrees your problem's over here, but all your project spending is over here. At the very least, are you aware of that in the business space? So capability is unique, stable, and abstracting from that, the sort of hierarchies and reporting lines to the organization. Now, creating a capability model is a lengthy process because to get a capability model that's going to be effective, you need to get a capability model that people have bought into. People agree, people are happy with it, happy with definitions, are happy with capabilities. Frequently, they can see themselves somewhere in that picture. Because if they can't see themselves in that picture, they start thinking, I'm not doing something of no value, or I'm about to get outsourced or sacked. So there's a lot of politics in the creation of a capability model, but that doesn't mean to say it has to be hard in terms of the mechanics of creating a capability model. So really the simple things is, think of what entities are important to that enterprise. And this is where you get the high-level data model. You just walk around, if you know the organisation, great. If you don't know the organisation, you're coming cool, you speak to people. You draw on your own personal experience, whatever it happens to be. And that will start to come up with terms. Are they customers? Are they clients? Different businesses will use the same word for different meanings, and different words for the same meaning. So understand what is the language of the organisation. You're talking about customers, you're talking about clients. You're talking about clients.
You were saying before oil rigs or doing
Yes.
things to do with oil rigs or drilling platforms
Yes.
is not part of capabilities.
Yes.
So are you saying you wouldn't have a capability, for example, oil rig management or oil rig maintenance? That would seem like a massive capability.
I would probably, if I was building it, I wouldn't have one around oil rigs specifically. I'd have a capability around, for example, extract oil, and I then have manage platform, manage rights within that extract oil space, and then if I drill down that manage platform, I might at that point have manage rigs, manage wells, manage whatever.
Because if I was a business person and I was in Shell and you showed me a business capability model that didn't have anything about oil rigs on it, I'd be worried. Because oil rigs is a major part of my company.
But I would have the outcome, so we manage rigs, acquire rigs, lease rigs.
Right, so oil rigs would be represented.
But oil rigs could be represented if you go down to level. I would probably wouldn't have for Shell of oil rig as the top thing. Because it's a mechanism to achieve an outcome. And if Shell decided they were to move out of the North Sea, move out of the Gulf, stop doing ocean-based drilling for oil, they would still be Shell, they would still be extracting oil, they'd still be refining oil, they'd still be selling oil. So as an organisation, the capability model at a certain level needs to be static. And then is effectively static as defining what they're doing as a business. Then you drill down to details, and as you go further down, you bring in capabilities that we currently have. So wells, oil rigs, they may have given capabilities that they want to have, that they want to develop as we move into the market. So
Fracking.
Well, I was trying to avoid the fracking, but
There'd be different
So these would be
capabilities.
lower levels of your
Yeah.
capability
Yes.
model. So they would be in the capability model.
they can be
Different
decomposed down, yes.
And there'd be different capability for different countries with different cultures, and so on.
Potentially.
Channels, enablers. You know, we put the oil rig as a channel or an enabler to realise your outcome.
So that's why I'm saying we don't have the asset.
Yeah.
We don't talk about oil rig as a thing.
I agree.
We talk about managing a rig as an active expression. That's your capability that has an outcome. And at the risk of being simple, if you've got, and you get this in the business rules that we did the Enterprise Architecture Conference in June, it's often talked about business rules and business. If I'm managing a rig, the outcome is the rig is managed.
Verbs rather than nouns.
Yeah, and you've got that sort of cross-handing thing he does. Rules is very good.
Well, manage isn't a good verb for that, is it?
Well, that's exactly what we get to, but it's a good starting verb. It's quite a meaningless verb. If you end up with your model with manage, it's like, well, what's the outcome of manage? What managed? What does that actually mean? But for the first cut, for the first brain dump of what's going on, manage is as good a word as any. And then we've got things like, for example, take those things you're talking about, which could be oil rigs, for example, if that's an important part, and then at the simplest level, you stick manage in front of it. Quite meaningless, but you know that something happens in that space, it's some outcome. Then you start going down and saying, well, actually, what is it we want to do? Manage customers with NAF. Actually, we want to onboard a customer. We want to know your customer. We want to get rid of the customer. So you start coming up with sometimes descriptions of what that capability is actually about. You start talking about that. And that's what you're discussing as you're going around with your first draft of capability model, largely has manage on it, and you refine and get buy-in around the whole language around capabilities. You may think you've got a capability that's missing, you may think you've got one that's actually ends up being split into two, but as people come up and they can't agree with one set of words on what it is, you go, actually that's two separate capabilities. Attract customer and onboard customer might be seen as being two separate capabilities rather than just get customer as a capability. Well, that's basic. Then there's polishing and politics we'll get to a bit later. So it's a communication tool. Really, it's part of the foundation, it's a communication tool. So what message, what language is going to resonate with the customer, with your organisation, with your client? So rather than service customer, you might want to put on there, you might be actually polite customer. It's a capability. And it starts to speak out to the business and start to talk about it. The art of you, for example, when you have one which is like manage the theatre, and that's all about the stadium curriculum. It's the theatre, it's that whole theatrical experience is a capability, managing that capability. So think about the language that you're going to use. Now, here's the exercise. I've spoken for nearly half an hour, so you have about 15 minutes. I've said 3 groups. We're going to think of 3 big examples, but if you want to do 4 groups, that's absolutely fine. Think about, one group thinks about a retail bank, one group thinks about a supermarket, one group thinks about a local authority. I just picked these examples because we've all suffered at the hands of retail banks, supermarkets, and local authorities. So we've all had experience of them. So we're all looking from the outside in of these organisations. You may, of course, have knowledge and be currently working in one of those organisation types, in which case you've got inside-out knowledge as well, which is useful. And if you want to have 4 groups, group 4, pick a domain, pick an industry, and do it. Okay. And what I'm not looking for
Tourist industry.
Pardon?
Tourist industry. Everybody goes on holiday.
Tourists. Okay. For number 4, tourist industry. Tourists.
Into enterprise architecture consultancy.
I'm laughing. Last year I did one. Simply for that, for a certain well-known company that's being adopted. I'm laughing. And I'd like you to pick out what you think are 4 of the top level capabilities of that organisation type. Okay? But that isn't actually the real challenge. I'd like to know what they are, but I'd also like to know what you didn't choose, more importantly, why you didn't think that was a top level capability. Because building the capability map is as much about what you rule out, or what you don't include at a particular level, as what it is about what you actually do include.
Surely a top level capability map should cover the entire enterprise.
Correct.
Therefore, we're not leaving anything out by having 4 top key capabilities, because they must encompass the entire enterprise.
Yeah, so we have 4. That are 4 of the top enterprise. There may be, you may want to have 8 as a top enterprise. Just give me 4. If you can give me 8, that's great. Just give me 4 of them as examples. But you may be, so if you take a supermarket, we may say there's a capability of provide change in the supermarket, or manage electronic payment is a capability in the supermarket. However, you may come back and go, well, actually, this was suggested, but it wasn't one of the top level ones.
Because it was included.
Because we think it should be included in one of the ones we already got. Or we think that actually that is the capability of the organisation. So, an example there, and at the risk of being challenged, there's a statement that we don't have a national health service, we have a national sickness service. Okay?
That's good. I like that.
That's not original. Somebody else said it. We're quoting this for example here. So you may say actually, what is the capability of the National Health Service? One of the capabilities of the National Health Service may be preventative health to stop people getting sick. You may equally say, as it's currently structured today, it doesn't achieve that output. That's not one of its capabilities. That's something that we think belongs to local authority under public health.
That's a fifth topic.
That capability of preventative health also has the sound of an objective. We
Yes.
want to provide preventative health.
But the organisation decide, is that something that it's within its boundary that it's trying to achieve?
No, I understand you, but it sounds.
If you look at the police, pick another example, the police. The fundamental job of the police is to deter crime. Not, if you look at all the sort of policy statements of the police forces in the UK and indeed in America, it's around it's the prevention and detection of crime. It's what's in their sort of statements. So I would expect them to have something in their capability model around preventing crime.
We've got the highest prison population in Europe, so they're not doing it very well, are they?
But that's part of the problem. Where is the organisation's mindset? If the organisation is spending all its time and effort and focus on the detect and punish, in effect, or detect and prosecute. Well, not anymore then. But they have that detecting and putting into CPS. If that's their focus, and they're not focusing on what people might consider the softer side of things, which is the education, the crime prevention classes, the Bobby on the beat type things, which are arguably preventative, then your organisational strategy, strategic aim of prevent and detect isn't being, which is part of your capability model. You look at it and say, actually, all the spending, all the focus is over here, that's unbalanced. Are we happy with that, or is that just something we need to restate? Or is our strategic direction wrong? That'll come through. That's why you do the business architecture piece. So, 4 groups: retail, local authority, supermarket chain, and hospitality. Travel industry, hospitality. 4 top-level capabilities, and particularly those ones that you thought you might want to add in. We had a discussion about whether they actually fit within the enterprise or not. Okay? I'll do 15 minutes on that, and then I'll bring it back to each session. Thank you. Just sort yourselves out, teams. We're going to try to organise these.
You can go back.